Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Wise Wednesday. And our guest today is Katie Bagli, an author who describes herself as someone who's passionately in love with the planet. And boy, does her work show this to us in so many ways. Katie, thank you so much for being our guest today. I have yet to meet someone who is as prolific a writer as you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me, Deepa, and it's a big honor for me. I feel to be here on this platform with you.
So, I want to tell our audience that Katie Bagli has her website, www.katiebagli.com, and it's a fascinating website also because it actually showcases the whole width of your work in such an interesting way, including the book reviews by your target audience, which is young kids starting at 8 years, 5 years. You target the children at
Right.
your readers at about 8 years, right?
8 years, but now it is also for younger children. So I'm concentrating on writing books for 5-year-olds also.
So, Katie, you started your career thinking that you might become a writer.
I had never dreamt, Deepa, that I would ever become a writer. As you can see, you can gauge my age from my white hair. And it just happened, sometimes you take a particular road and you come across a crossroad and you decide which turn to take. And I think I took the right turn. Suddenly, about 12 years back, it just happened, it just clicked, and I became a writer.
So, what was that inspiration? Do you remember that day, that time when that book popped
Um,
into your head, or what was that trigger?
Actually, it's a story if you want me to tell you.
Please.
About 12 years back, or maybe 13 years back, I found I had more time on hand because my children were well settled by then. And since I was always deep in my heart, very passionate about nature and wildlife, I became an active member of Bombay Natural History Society. And I took up a volunteers training program over there. And then I also did certain courses with them, like entomology and ornithology and botany and biodiversity. And during these courses, we used to go for a lot of field trips out in the wild. It was so very fascinating to be there with a good guide, from BNHS. We used to look under every stone, under the leaves, under the leaf litter, and always come up with something new. It just flummoxed me. So I would come back home and weave whatever I had learned, all those facts, into little stories for children. And I began circulating these stories amongst my like-minded friends. But then it was my friends who inspired me and actually pushed me into trying to publish all these stories in the form of a book. In fact, one of my dear friends even told me that if you ever publish your stories, I will be the first one to buy your book. That really set me going. It set the ball rolling, and I did it. And I never looked back after that because I thought it was a wonderful feeling, to become an author and to reach out to so many children and to talk to them about his stories. Yes.
So, you have been writing now for 10 years.
Yes.
And in 10 years, you have written 34 books. And each book has some 15 or 16 short stories. That is a lot of productivity, Katie. I mean, tell us a little bit about your style of working. How do you work? When do you work? Where do you work?
There is no routine as such. I mean, earlier especially, there was no routine. There would be days on end when I wouldn't get an opportunity to write, and then all of a sudden the flow would come one after another for several days together. But the pandemic changed everything. It suddenly gave me a lot more time in the house. So a lot of my books actually came out during the pandemic itself. But of course, even earlier, as I told you, my children were settled. So I had a lot of time on hand. And this suddenly gave me so much fulfillment, writing and even illustrating my books, that I spent a lot of my time doing it. So
So that's what, like about 6 or 7 hours of daily work.
Sometimes 6 or 7 hours, sometimes it's 2 hours, or sometimes it just days without anything being done also. It just I think maybe when you have your heart in something, it happens. You can call it pure magic, but it does happen.
Yeah. So you say this is your calling. So maybe you want to just tell our listeners what that calling is and how does it sort of fill you like a dervish and make you work the way you do.
See, first of all, I mean, you must be aware that I have two major passions in life. One is children, and the other is nature. So, writing for children about nature is the best formula I can say for myself, to keep me fulfilled and keep me going and happy. And it's a calling because I feel I need to reach out now. It hurts to know what a lot of things are happening around us, as you are aware. The climate is changing drastically, and so many things, we don't even want to talk about. We want to hope, we want to hold on to hope and hope there's a better planet tomorrow. So we have to reach out to our children because they are our future ambassadors. They should know what's happening and they should know what they can do. So to sensitize them about our planet, I always try and keep a positivity in my stories. I don't want to just make it all doom and gloom, but then they should feel the responsibility also in a subtle manner through my stories that they have to do something to to keep our planet alive and happy and beautiful.
So, Katie, you remember when we turned 16 at the Maharashtra Nature Park? That was 5 years, I think, into your writing exercise. You did a tree walk with us, and
Yes.
we also had an exhibition of your books, an exhibition come sale of your books. And how many, I think at that point in time, you were just 5 years into your nature study, but you were a veteran. I mean, you were like so knowledgeable, and I think you're like a sponge around nature. I guess you just sort of are like that, and it exudes in whatever you tell it. So you can really bring a subject come alive. So you've been writing about so many facets of nature. So maybe you want to just tell, how does this theme develop in your mind?
Um, First of all, as you must be aware, there is so many intriguing things about nature. Nature can be quirky, it can be bizarre, it can be mind blowing. The facts about nature, I mean, you never cease to be fascinated by nature. For instance, I'll just give you a few examples. There is this tortoise shell beetle, which will disguise itself with strands of its own fecal matter so that, it looks very obscure and it will not be attacked by its predator. There are all kinds of strange things happening in nature. Sometimes there are battles between two colonies of ants, and they're one colony of ants. They are the slave drivers. They actually raid the other colony of ants and take away the young larvae and turn them into their own slaves. Such fascinating things. So I mean, with all this, before you can, it's so easy to weave stories from these facts of nature. So all my stories have are fictional, but they're woven around true facts. you know so it makes it fascinating, and at the same time it's a learning tool for the children.
So, what were the beginnings of your love for nature? How did it begin? Where did it begin?
Actually, it began with, as I told you, with Bombay Natural History Society. Before that also, I was always quite connected with nature, but maybe there was not enough opportunity to go out in the wild, to go for nature walks. But once I became an active member of BNHS, I started going out, and then we formed a group of friends. We started going out on our own too. We would go with tree books and explore and try to learn ourselves about the new trees. So it just went on and on. This was the beginning, just going out in the wild. Even for children, this is the best a way out. They should be exploring out in the wild. They should be climbing up trees, playing with soil. That's how you learn. When your connection with nature is so strong, you get to know so many things about, which otherwise we give a blind eye to. Most of us are so busy in our everyday lives. It's like wearing horse blinds. We know just what we have to do. We don't look beyond that. So we need to do that, I feel.
So the latest project that you worked on is on what theme of nature?
The latest book you're talking about
Yes.
uh, was my book, The Insect Concert, which is for 5-year-olds, 5 to 8-year-olds. And why Insect Concert? Because uh, we don't realize, so many people don't know that insects can also sing, and they can also produce music in different ways. Just like birds keep calling, insects do also call. They call out for their mates, or they call out to assert their territory for different reasons. So that's what made me want to write this little story about the insect concert. Yeah.
So you've written about different, I think there's a very interesting theme. The less known lovables, the less liked lovables, the
Yes.
mysterious lovables, the glamorous lovables. So this thing about creating a sense of love, for other creatures in nature. I think there's also an underlying theme over there for you that you want to talk about.
Yes. This was a series of books which all came under the heading Amazing Animal Tales. Actually, I just went to my publisher, Shri Book, and told him, this thought was in my mind that there are so many animals against whom we have myths and superstitions, and we have a certain mindset, which is not really fair to that animal. Like, so why don't I write a book of stories that'll bust all these myths? So he suggested then make it into a series of 4 different books. So that's why I began with the Less Like Lovables, which is a myth busting book. So I wrote stories about spiders and toads and owls and bats and such animals, hyenas, against whom everybody, thinks that they are the evil ones, the horror stories and what we see in the films. That is what, converts people's minds. Then the next I wrote about the less known lovables, which is a book about animals deep down in the ocean, difficult for us to even approach, or in those remote jungles and marshy, swampy areas where it's difficult to approach, or high altitude mountains. So I wrote stories about these very unknown kind of animals. Of course, I had to do a little research, quite a lot of research on that. But this was the theme. Then I wrote a story about the glamorous lovables. In contrast, the animals which are supposed to have charisma and beauty according to the human mindset, like the tiger and the lion and the elephant. And I wrote stories about that in my glamorous lovables. And the last of this series was the mysterious lovables. There are certain animals which have an air of mystery around them. For example, the black panther, or you can say the king cobra. So that's how that series came about, the series of Amazing Animal Tales.
So now, if I'm calling the Amazing Animal uh, as a book, how did you go about writing it? Were you writing it all sequentially? Did you finish one and then start the
Yes.
other, or do you parallelly are you writing
No,
it?
no. I finished one, concentrated on one, and then went on to the other. Definitely. Yes.
So when you are in the midst of writing this project, what other parts of your life change? For instance, what is it that you're doing less of? What is it that you're
Yeah.
doing not doing at all?
I give cause to my husband to complain, you can say, because I do a lot of daydreaming. I tend to be absent minded because in my mind, I'm focusing on the stories. That happens. But of course, it's all taken with a pinch of salt. And sometimes, you want a certain twist to occur in the story, certain climax to be reached. So you keep thinking. So what I do is, after writing part of the story, I give myself a break for maybe 1 or 2 days. I don't touch the book at all because subconsciously I'm mulling over the whole thing and
Mhm.
trying to understand what should be the next turn of events in my story. And then it clicks, it just comes automatically suddenly to you. So then I go back to writing. No.
And at that time, those 2 days when you've taken a break, what's your mindset like? Are you anxious till you finish it? Are you
No,
relaxed?
I should be relaxed. If I'm anxious, then I'll never get the never get to know what to write next. You have to be relaxed and you think of other things. But still, it's amazing. The human body is amazing, I should say. Although I'm thinking of other things, doing other things, that factory is there, the back of your mind. It is working still. You're not concentrating on it, but it's still working, and the solution comes to you somehow.
So when after you've written the book, do you have like a small inner circle with whom you discuss the book, or you take feedback
Um,
or something, or does it go boom to the publisher?
No, earlier I never used to have an inner circle and it would go straight to the publisher. Sometimes I would run some of my stories by the experts of BNHS just for their opinion. That was sometimes. But nowadays, when I write books for smaller children, especially, I do read out these stories to my students of my creative writing class, to see how they accept it. What is their opinion?
So before you started writing, what was your day job?
Ah, that's another story. Uh, many years ago, actually, I had graduated in, first of all, microbiology. That was a totally different, you can say, sphere of life. And I was working in the medical department of Hex Pharmaceuticals. But then my son was born, and I found it was necessary to be at home with him because there was no one to look after him. So I gave up my job. And gradually, as he grew older and my second child was born, I decided to compromise by giving private tuitions in the house. So I began teaching maths and science to school students. So I was always in touch with children, actually. So for quite a few years, I was tutoring privately, you can say freelance tutoring. And when my first book was published, and suddenly the world opened in a different way for me because I had to go to schools to do storytelling or discuss my book, I found there was less and less time for my other occupation. So I just stopped tutoring altogether at that point.
This is so fascinating. You also have been an illustrator to a lot of your books.
Yes.
Yeah. So was art and always a part of you?
It was not really a part of me in the sense that I'm just an amateur, you can say, at art. I've not trained myself in any way. But in fact, I remember even whilst giving tuitions, while the children would be busy solving problems, I would be doodling, just scribbling away and passing my time. But then when I started writing stories, my first publisher was Schreiber. And in fact, he asked me to illustrate my story. So, so I did, and I found that was also very fulfilling. And when you write your story and you illustrate it, you know exactly what you want the children to see as an illustration because you know your story best. So that's how it came about.
So, I mean, that's writing, that's thinking, uh, writing again, and then illustrating, right? So, does the sequence go like that? Or sometimes you're writing a story and you've got 15 more to write, but you do the illustration side by side?
No, usually it is like I finish all my writing work and then I begin the illustrations.
So,
That's what I do.
for our listeners, all of this talk about children, you also did some very dramatic adult work. So you want to tell us about that? How did the 150 years of Rani Bagh come to be the coffee table book, and
Yes.
what went as a precursor to writing that book?
Well, actually, it all began in 2007. As I told you, I'm a part of a group of friends, all very fond of nature, and we still go for tree walks and nature walks. We go out in the wild. So we used to go to all the green areas of Mumbai because I'm based in Mumbai, and with maybe a tree guide in our hands and learn about the various trees ourselves. Although we had all done this course in botany with Bombay Natural History Society. And Rani Bagh is one place in Mumbai, in the center of, you can say, insane urbanity. It is in the heart of the city, but it has so many beautiful trees. You just step into Rani Bagh and you feel the temperature dropping. You feel you're shut away from the sound, the cacophony of the traffic on the road, and it's cool and shady. So we used to haunt that place pretty often. And then we came to know from the newspapers that the BMC was planning to revamp the place completely and make it into a world-class zoo. So that was fine. But their plans consisted of, a lot of work, like having, changing the topography of the place, like having a Sahara desert somewhere and having a swamp jungle somewhere. And we were, we started wondering how that would affect the trees which were standing there. The trees, which are many of them are healthy centenarians. So we started filing RTIs to find out their plans. And then we came to know that it would involve a lot of digging work to do this revamp. And that would naturally affect the roots of the trees. There are more than 3,000 trees over there. So that is how we began a campaign for the BMC to change their plans to make sure that no harm came to the trees. So we started this group, Save Rani Bagh Group. And then it so happened that the 150th year of Rani Bagh was coming up. So we decided, why not have a coffee table book? So we started gathering information. We even we used to visit the archives of the Times of India office to go through the very old newspapers to find out the history of Rani Bagh and everything related to the Rani Bagh. And there were several supporters. We got support from many important people like Bittu Segal from BNHS and Firoza Godrej and lots of other people also. So with the help of all of them, we came up with this coffee table book, 150 Years of Rani Bagh. So this book, everybody should look at it. It tells about the trees, all the trees over there. It talks about the history of Rani Bagh. It also talks about the backstage life of Rani Bagh in the sense that because there is so much greenery, there are so many trees, the place draws so many species of animals and birds and insects which are not caged. They just come automatically. They're drawn to the place. Like mongooses, you find them sometimes roaming about. So many other birds which come visiting this place. So all this came together in this one book, coffee table book.
And the books are all available online as well.
Yes, the book is available. In fact, coincidentally, now they are celebrating the 160th year. The BMC is planning to do it in a big way, the 160th year of Rani Bagh. Even in the naming of Rani Bagh, we requested them that, look, this is actually first a botanical garden and then a zoo, because it was established as a botanical garden long back by the British. And later on, after some years, animals were introduced. So why not even name the place as, now it is called VJV Udyan Zoo. So VJV Udyan Botanical Gardens and Zoo. That's what we wanted to be.
There's also another a book for adults that you've written, right?
Yes, Trees of Dadapasi Colony. So that's the one I've written because I live in Dadapasi Colony, which is a kind of a green haven also in Mumbai. Many people flock over here in the evenings for recreation because it has a famous 5 gardens, 5 big gardens. But in addition, there are other smaller gardens too. So there are about 14 gardens altogether in this one small place. And actually, there is this NGO called Green Lines. And Father Savio, who was heading this NGO, asked me one fine day, why don't you write this book about trees of the Adipasi colony? We will support you. So that's how that book came about. In fact, right now, this book is out of print and there's still a lot of demand for the book. So we are looking into the possibility of reprinting it.
So, Katie, what's the next project that you have planned, and what are you writing right now as we speak?
There are 2 books which are ready and are about to go for printing. So I just told you my last book was the insect concert for 5-year-olds and 5 to 8-year-olds. So for the same age group, another book called A Wormy Tale, which is about the earthworm, about life underground for 5 to 8-year-olds. That is about, it just went into print, in fact, yesterday. And then there is another book with Shri Book Publishers, Uncommon Stories about common trees, which I had written again in the past 2 years during the lockdown and in the pandemic, which will soon be going for printing also.
And what have you dreamt of writing next? Is there something like a wish list? Do your readers now tell you, Auntie
Yes.
Katie, please write about this now, or something like that? Do you get that farmaish?
Well, in the past 2 or 3 years, you can say, I've been co-authoring also with a couple of my friends. Particularly, there is this one friend, Medha Rajadaksha. I've already co-authored. She likes to write poetry. So she came up to me once and said, why don't we jointly write a book of poems? So our first book together was The Zoo Around You, in which, we talk about all the creatures, the urban wild around us, not those creatures which are, inside cages or surrounded by moats, but what you see inside your house, like maybe the spider or maybe the occasional caterpillar which comes up in the veggies, or the lizard on the wall, or the crow outside. So we wrote a book of poems. It became very popular. Then we wrote several other books, also poetry books. And recently, Medha and I have written a book together. We're hoping to get it published. We've still not found a publisher as yet. It's called Here Comes the Parade, Animal Parade. So again, this is for early readers, young readers, and it's about, to show the happiness in life. Animals can also go on a parade, and little poems about them with little facts woven into the poems.
Katie Bagli, it's been such a joy talking to you, and you really, a wise Wednesday, talking about books for children, helping to make children aware about the planet by learning to love what is around us. I think it can't be a better contribution than this to bring your 2 loves together, which is nature and children, like you said. And you've really given us so much food for thought, and I'm sure our listeners are going to go and check out the website and go and pick up your books. I think it would make a great gift as well. Thank you for coming today, Katie.
Thank you so much. I'd just like to add here that many of my books have been taken up by schools too, as the general readers. So I do hope more schools do that, so that more and more children get sensitized and become aware.
Amazing. Wish you all the best, and maybe keep seeing this prolific stream of books come our way year after year after year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Your wishes should come true. Thank you for the blessings. And I thank Lumiere for bringing me on to this lovely platform of Wise Wednesday. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you. Thank you so much.